Hey, good Tuesday evening, everyone. This is State Representative Brad Halbrook, and welcome back to another edition of the Tuesday night Illinois Freedom Caucus roundtable and discussion as we kind of dive into some really interesting topics here this evening. Kind of doing with ratings of the members of the Illinois General Assembly by the Illinois Conservative Union. And then the governor has some recent polling out on his favorable and unfavorable situation as governor of this great state of Illinois. And so with that, let's just pull up the slides, gentlemen, and let's get right into the discussion as we talk about Governor Pritzker, or I'm sorry, as we talk about the CPAC scores brought forth by the Illinois Conservative Union and what's kind of going on there. I'm going to kick it off to Senator Chesney, as he is the ranking senator there with a great score from CPAC. Senator Chesney, welcome to the show.
Thank you, Brad. And for those that are watching, you're going to hear the Freedom Caucus do something a little bit different. We're gonna brag just a little bit because we do a lot in Springfield and we do a lot in our districts, but we also get a chance to get independently measured by groups that share a lot of the conservative values that we talk about each week. And CPAC is, somewhat some would consider the gold standard for the review of votes and what we do. I mean, it's not perfect. They reviewed 19 votes. We wish they would do 40 or 50, but they did about 19 votes in both the House and the Senate, and reflects how people vote and then also what their viewpoints are, and they generate a score. And in the Senate, unfortunately, of the 19 Republican members, only 2 people received an acceptable score. And some might ask yourself, how does that happen? I think that's a good question you should pose to the senators that didn't achieve those scores. But, we talk oftentimes on this show and then just within our districts that what you say on the campaign trail or what you say at the coffee and the diners need to match how you vote. And when it doesn't is when you see people push back and get very, very frustrated. And I think what the Freedom Caucus does very, very well is, we get together. We're a small group, but we get together. We can crank out a press release in a matter of minutes. We're always on the same page. We very rarely ever have a disagreement. And it's not because we just all fall in line. It's because we share the same value system, even if we're 3 or 4 hours apart from one another. Unfortunately, the Republican Party and the Republican Party platform isn't shared by all the members of the Republican Party. And that's why the Freedom Caucus exists, right? It doesn't exist because, we have a bunch of right-wingers in leadership. The Freedom Caucus exists because what people are wanting in our districts isn't matching what people are producing amongst the ranks in leadership. And so you could say, well, you're not generating unity, or you're not wanting people to get along. Okay, well, great. Let's look at the CPAC score and let's see how people are independently measured. And when they are, every member of the Freedom Caucus achieved an acceptable rating. And in the Senate, only 2 of 19 members, me included, only 2 members achieved an acceptable rating. So this is in part, there's many reasons why the Freedom Caucus of Illinois exists. And the most important thing we can do is vote. And those votes, in many cases, don't line with the interests of the respective districts. And the CPAC score correctly highlights that.
Exactly. Well said. And so, Senator Chesney, thank you for being the most conservative Illinois senator. I think that's quite a thing, and I don't know that it's a tough thing to accomplish, but it's an important thing to accomplish. And so, I appreciate your leadership in the Senate. Let's go to Leader Niemerg, as he's one of the few of us that are up there in the mid 90% rating. So, Leader Niemerg, what's your thoughts on these ratings and rankings as you've seen them come out here in the last couple of weeks?
Well, thank you, Brad, and folks. Thanks for tuning in with us here this evening. And it's always interesting to see these ratings come out. As Senator Chesney had said, it did an excellent job. It's folks, you want to check these ratings out. Look to see where your rep or senator falls in on the CPAC ratings. But just as I look here, Brad, congratulations, 95, Chris 95, and myself 95. These are very excellent ratings. And if I look down the scorecard here, you have 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. The conservative excellence, and 1, 2, 3, 5 out of 7 on the Conservative Excellence are Freedom Caucus members and Conservative Achievement Freedom Caucus members as well. So we run the board on the Conservatives in Excellence Awards with CPAC. And this is really important because, Senator Chesney spoke to this very well. A lot of folks can be out on the campaign trail and they'll talk about how conservative they are and how they're fighting Democrats and what they represent. But once they're in the House or once they're in the Senate, that can sometimes change, or their voting records don't quite reflect that. So it's always a good idea to check on these ratings, see where your senator or rep falls within that. And of course, we're at 95%. Some other folks may be at 90 or in the 80s, and those are acceptable scores with CPAC. As Senator Chesney said, they rate different bills. We'd like them to rate more, but it's always good to look and see where your rep or senator falls in. And if they're lower and they're telling you one thing on the campaign trail, and you see them being very low on CPAC, you just might want to ask a question. But I want to say congratulations to my fellow colleagues with the Freedom Caucus and everybody. We'd like to see some of these folks that are conservatives as well join the Freedom Caucus. So that would be great. But yeah, congratulations to the Freedom Caucus.
Yeah. Thank you, Leader Niemergen. Well, let's go to Chairman Leader Miller. Chairman Leader Miller, these votes are not on softball issues. These are tough votes about tax increases, supporting illegal immigrants or not, woke education, green energy. These are tough issues, and we're maintaining the conservative rankings there. What's your thoughts about all of this?
Well, I wonder, Senator Chesney mentioned a couple of times that about the reason why the Illinois Freedom Caucus even exists. And we exist because Republicans refuse to act like Republicans. And I know that we've been challenged them to return to some of the defining principles, define us who we are as Republicans. And, you have to think about the principled leadership that we find in the Word of God and the Constitution and a Republican Party platform. And some of the specifics, we had Republicans voting for gas tax increase. We had Republicans voting for this green energy scam. We had Republicans voting for Amendment 1. We had Republicans voting for UN Day. We had Republicans voting for making illegals policemen. We've got all kinds of Republicans taking donations from Democrat organization, and the capstone of all that is we have Republicans that are Edgar Fellows, and we all know that Jim Edgar endorsed Kamala Harris against Donald Trump. I mean, how dangerous is that?
Right. Yeah. So here's a screen share of the webpage with many of these votes and different things on there that you can go to the website, and it's being scrolled across the bottom where you can find these different bills that were voted on. Chairman Leader Miller, I guess I will. You've neglected to mention that I have the highest lifetime score in the General Assembly. And 2 years ago, I campaigned on that fact that I had that highest. I was the highest ranking member of the General Assembly with the highest ranking conservative score. And I was in a meeting with our leadership, a public meeting, and our leader was there, and she was just stunned by that fact, and she wanted me to share what was written, and I did. And nothing more was said on her part about it. So the proof is in the pudding. Year after year, thankfully, I continue to maintain what I say on the campaign trail is the way I vote, and people are watching that stuff. That's important in throughout the entire state of Illinois. That's
why I sit by you.
Hopefully it's a positive influence. So anyhow, it's good stuff. All right. Any other closing thoughts, gentlemen, before we move on to the next topic this evening? All right. Seeing none, let's go on to the next one. We want to talk about the week that Governor Pritzker's had over the past couple of weeks as he continues to harbor not only illegal aliens, but we have legislators from Texas that have made their way up here to escape their duties as a legislator in Texas. I'm not sure what they hope to achieve, but I think it's really interesting that they have fled the state of Texas over gerrymandered districts to come to Illinois that many would say if it's not the highest or the greatest gerrymandered state, it's got to be in the top 3 for gerrymandered states, as we are all living proof to that fact. So with that, let's go to Chairman Leader Miller. I know you've been out there talking about this gerrymandering issue a little bit, and then also we've got to discuss this matter of Governor Pritzker's new favorable or unfavorable ratings that have just been announced in the last several days. So, Miller?
Yeah, I don't know if we can zoom in on that map there, or if that's too small for people to see, but that's a red and blue map. There we go. That's a little bit better. That's a red and blue map of Illinois, and themselves 14 congressional districts and only 3 Republican districts out of that map. And so I think that that's pretty telling when you just look at at how that map looks. That the Democrats are known to have some real bad ideas that they won't take ownership of, and they claim that they are dominating Illinois politics because they have such great ideas. And my conclusion is that they don't have great ideas. They're just really good at drawing maps. Right. And I think that it was a real political misstep for JB Pritzker to draw attention to actually how bad the map in Illinois is.
Right, exactly. And Leader Niemerg, here the electorate in the state of Illinois is 44% Republican. We've got about 17% of the congressional districts that Chairman Miller has pointed out. We're a third of the House and a third of the Senate. So, the elected officials in the House, in the Senate, in Congress from Illinois does not reflect the electorate.
No, it doesn't, Brad, at all. And that's something that we've been talking about for several years after this redistricting map was done by the radical left and Governor Pritzker. This state is not as blue as what the Democrats make it out to be. They just districted it that way. They made it to where gerrymandering, where they could get more seats, they can control more congressionally, they can control more in the House and the Senate. And then they're running the radical left. The bills are coming from the radical left. The progressives are steering their caucus, moreover to the point to where even moderate Democrats, I think, are fed up with with the radical left here in the state of Illinois and what they're doing to this state. So you have a situation where gerrymandering allowed the Democrats to control the House and the Senate, and then you have a situation where they're allowing the radical left of their own party at the helm, which is causing unbelievable harm to great people of the state of Illinois through, higher taxes, energy costs are through the roof. Every issue that we could go down, we could spend an hour talking about that has just been detrimental to the people of this great state of Illinois. But Governor Pritzker is making some very serious errors here. His favorability numbers are low, the lowest they've ever been. If there was an election today, folks, this is very, very important. If there was an election today, his favorability numbers are low enough to where a Republican would win the election today. So we've got to keep the heat on. We have to keep talking about these issues. And when he, decided to talk about gerrymandering, I thought it was absolutely hilarious because this guy had the worst. He lied twice inside 2 maps that were unconstitutional. He campaigned on fair maps. And let's not forget that the Illinois Supreme Court had not been redistricted in 60 years. And he decided to do that to gain more power in the state of Illinois. So when he says, hey, we let kindergartners draw the map and makes jokes about it and then draws comparisons to what's happening in Texas. And like I said before, I'm all about having Texas lawmakers in the state of Illinois, just not these Texas lawmakers. I find it laughable.
Exactly. And I'm sure Leader Niemerg, the governor, is going to appreciate that you pointed out that he's making some errors in the decisions that he's making, but that's great. I think he needs to have that counsel provided to him because he is not doing things very well. Let's go to the Senate. Leader Chesney, what's your perspective on this Texas legislators fleeing the state of Texas and this favorability or lack thereof ratings? Oh, Senator Chesney, I think we lost your volume.
Can you hear me now?
There, you're back.
Oh, I was having a great conversation. So, in Texas, they gerrymander the maps and they have economic prosperity and no state income tax. In Illinois, they gerrymander the maps led by Democrats, and they have the worst taxes in the entire country. And so, I would first say that we have to elect more Republicans throughout the country if you want your taxes and you want more economic prosperity. But kind of going back to what I think President Trump is correct is, the Democrats play by a separate set of rules. And if the game is gerrymandering, we need to look at places like Florida and Texas where we can gerrymander, because they do it to us in California, in Illinois, and New York. And so the Democrats, of course, this candidate Pritzker was not going to sign a gerrymandered map. Of course, we know that's a lie. If he's talking or waddling, he's lying. And so, that's the issue, which is in part why Governor Pritzker's approval ratings are so low, is because people don't trust him. And when you take a look at the, how you eliminate cash bail, how you have the Trust Act where law enforcement can't communicate with ICE, how you have universal income where they just pay able-bodied people not to work, how you have a mayor that has a 9% approval rating in the city of Chicago, and you have just people fleeing what was once a great city. How all that happens is through a process of gerrymandering and ridiculous ideas, and it's a combination of both. And so, Adam correctly noted that we are not as left as people would have you believe. But when you back out the money in the maps, Republicans compete in this state. But JB Pritzker, what he doesn't want to talk about is spend $400 million deceiving the taxpayers and the voters of this state. And then they make it almost impossible in some of these areas to compete through these map processes. So all President Trump said is, guys, if you're going to do it to us in blue states, let's do it to them in red states. So bring them on. But hey, listen, this wouldn't be the first time that Governor Pritzker rolled out the red carpet for people that don't want to work.
Exactly. Well, and I think I heard Ken Paxton, the Attorney General from Texas, talk the other night. I think he was on the Jeannie Ives Real Story, and he talked about how Texas has had millions of law-abiding citizens have moved into the state of Texas. They've got to redistrict the maps. They've got some communities, some areas that are underrepresented. They've got some areas that are overrepresented. And so it's time for to redistrict, to reapportion. And so it's not unprecedented. And so I think to represent the population of these states fairly, it's in order. And so, it's just so hypocritical of the governor. And again, maybe that's why he seems to be underwater in his favorable rating. So any closing comments on this slide before we move into the next one, gentlemen? I guess we have not talked about the rising electric bills. Leader Chairman, you and I have done a press conference last week. Many of us have been on media and putting out probably emails and social media posts. I'm sure we're all getting the calls, the emails about these rising electric rates that are going on. And gentlemen, this is all a result of really, really bad policy that's created. And of course, you listen to the environmentalists and they said, well, we just have to have more ratepayer subsidies to subsidize more programs to make people more efficient and learn how to grow the use of alternative energies. What a farce. Gentlemen, any thoughts on the electricity situation?
Absolutely, Brad. I mean, and Chris and I, we sit on energy and environment, folks, and it's just the spin coming from Governor Pritzker. And folks, we live it in Springfield, so we know what he's doing. We know what he's saying. We see him. And then he comes out and says the absolute opposite and has a willing media. And the energy issue is another issue that he just spins and lies about. Here he is blaming Trump because his green initiatives aren't working. Well, he has his green initiative directors come before energy and environment. And we have sat down. Brad, you've asked him. Chris, you've asked him. I've asked him. I said, okay, you guys are shutting down all coal and natural gas. Costs are quadrupling. They're going through the roof. You have this green energy, and I'm not even getting into politics, but it's a green energy scam. But I just ask, hey, logistically, how are you going to make this work? How are you going to make your initiatives keep costs low for ratepayers and make all of this work? And they don't have an answer. The only answer they can give, and Brad, you said this, is, well, we need to go greener faster. That's not going to do it. We have seen that the costs are skyrocketing. We see that we don't have the energy to meet our needs. And it's all 100% because of poor public policy from the Clean Energy Jobs Act, outlawing coal and natural gas. And then on the heels of that, they stripped all local control from our counties on wind and solar. So this is a terrible thing that's happening to the folks here in the state of Illinois. And everybody that's watching needs to understand that your energy costs are skyrocketing. Your taxes are skyrocketing because of Governor JB Pritzker. End of discussion.
Exactly. Let's go to Chairman Miller. You can talk about this utility bill that just popped up, and then we'll close out this discussion with Senator Chesney and his perspective from the northern part of the state. Leader Miller?
Well, I think that one of the things that we talked about in our press conference last week was the prices you see on your electric bill are the direct result of failed public policy. And this has been a complete disaster, once again, for the hardworking, particularly the middle class. But this has been brought to you by Governor Pritzker, by the Democrats in Springfield, and the woke green bad deal mafia. You know, the pretenders, because we're pretending that this is real, have destroyed energy independence, taking power generation off the grid, and actually set us back in years in reliability. All of this in the name of worshiping their green goddess. And some people think that Venus was her name, but you know, losers, the losers play the blame game. And I think it's important that we're crystal clear in the fact that Donald Trump did not cause this problem. JB Pritzker and the radical Democrats and the Greenies caused this problem. And Donald Trump is trying to clean up the mess that they created.
Right, exactly. And Senator Chesney, the governor wants to blame the grid operators, MISO and PJM, along with the president. But, you know, the fact of the matter is these alternative installations are scattered all over ranch and farmland country. And, you know, he blames these operators for not connecting them back to the grid. But the cost and the expense of bringing these online, because they're scattered all over farm and ranch land all over the United States, is very expensive. I don't know. Any thoughts on all of this?
Well, I think people that are watching first have to ask themselves the question, when was the last time that Governor Pritzker ever paid his own electric bill? And I bet it's been, if ever, has been decades. And so he doesn't relate to normal people because he's inherited all of his wealth, and he just doesn't, it doesn't impact him. So he only cares because he politically has to care. But then I'm reminded of when you go to Wisconsin or you're right up near the border and the gas prices fall 50 to 70 cents. And I say, well, is that just a result of, of the border, or is that a result of tax policy? And of course, we know it's a tax policy in the state of Illinois, regulatory policy, et cetera. And it actually carries over to our energy policies in the state. You know, they passed the Green New scam in Illinois. Republicans joined in that Green New scam that put coal and natural gas, put the energy production of our state and paralyzed it, and really went to the world of wind and solar. It's heavily subsidized, and it doesn't put out the energy necessary for the demand. And then our genius governor, also known as Governor Pritzker, decided that, hey, by the way, we're going to put coal and natural gas out of business, but let's do something even more insane. Let's bring in the data centers that require more energy production. And then, oh, by the way, our Aunt Ethel that's sitting there in her 1,000-square-foot house on a fixed income, oh, yeah, we're going to really stick it to her. And then we're going to blame Ameren and ComEd for raising their electrical rates 40% because of the Green New scam that JB Pritzker put into place. So, you know, he only cares because he politically has to. The net result in Illinois is a few things. One, we're one of two states that lost population, and JB Pritzker is a census denier. So all the millions and millions of people that he packed into our state that were illegals, he still lost to population. Number two is the overall combined tax rate in the state of Illinois is the highest in the country. Net result, Democrats have dominated the political landscape in this state for decades. The result is we all pay more. It's very clear. Then that's the reason that most people are frustrated in the state, and the reason that many people have to stop voting for these idiots and start voting for people that have a little bit more common sense.
Exactly. And gentlemen, as we move into the last slide, it does not matter what policy matter that Democrats touch, they always make the policy worse. They make the situation worse. And of course, they make it more expensive. With that, let's go to Director Colin Mosley, our Freedom Caucus director. We got some events coming up here. I'm going to turn it over to you to kind of walk us through these different things that we have scattered across the state over the next several weeks.
Yeah, thanks, Brad. And, I actually couldn't even fit it all on one screen. We have so many great things coming up. Next Saturday, the 23rd, we've got a ballot chasing training in White County. Folks, if we're going to win anything back this cycle, you better get focused on ballot harvesting and ballot chasing real quick. We've got an awesome town hall coming up in Jed Davis's district, October 21st, multi-county town hall. So please join us for that. We're joining the Tazewell County Republican Women on September 20th at the Pekin Country Club. So please join us for a brunch that weekend. We've got more things coming up. We're going to have a town hall in Chesney's district. We're going to have another ballot chase training in the Peoria area. So just stay tuned and stay watching our Facebook page and our website, because we're truly trying to bring the show on the road and bring it to your front door.
Exactly. And Director, if you'll take us to the last page with the website and that listed and close us out for the evening.
Sure. Yeah. So here's our website. Here's our Substack. This is where you can stay plugged in. This is where you can find content from, hey, you learned it today, the most conservative officially, according to CPAC. Don't take our word for it. Take CPAC's word for it. Most conservative lawmakers in the state of Illinois, the only caucus to receive 100% accommodations from CPAC. This is where you'll find our content, our news, our press releases, all of the above. And hey, also it's petition season. Make sure you are supporting your local candidates, getting petition signatures. Make sure you ask them where they stand on the issues. Hey, don't be afraid to ask their CPAC score before you sign their petition.
Exactly.
Make sure you know what you're doing.
Yeah. And also we're on X and YouTube. And so check that out. And with that, gentlemen, let's say good night for the evening. And Director, if you will hit the closing video, that'd be great. Have a great evening, everyone. Thanks for joining.